Hey, how's it going? Hold on. That seemed really loud. Today I am going to talk about, well, here, let me just do the things first. All of that stuff holds true, except for this is not exactly a video I liked or a movie I liked, but I'm still gonna give it a review. I don't know if you want to call it good, but hold on here. Let me do more disclaimer stuff real quick. So, hi, shoulders in the way. That's what I'm going to talk about, the power of the dog. Uh, and then this other stuff. All right. Let's hope my makeshift stand doesn't fall over. Okay. So I'm going to do this a little bit differently. Oh boy. One of my ears just totally clogged up. I don't even know what I sound like right now. If it sounds like what I'm hearing, it sounds like I'm in a hole. Anyway, so the power of the dog. It is a movie from 2021, and it's an Oscar contender. Uh, and I guess it got buzz, but not as much as. Well, I guess the movie companies never get as much as they want unless it's ridiculously huge and popular and blah blah blah. This one I'm doing a little differently. I normally wouldn't even cover something like this on my channel because it's a little bit more serious than I care to deal with normally, but it's kind of pertinent, so I feel like I also can't leave it alone. And the difference here is that, I mean, I didn't really do anything very different from what I do before, in preparation for, filming one of these, but I really had to give some serious thought to my delivery. So here's my first impression. Oh, and I'm not telling you names and writing cast and blah blah blah. I'm just gonna just gonna link that uh, in the information box for the video. Uh, just because I don't want to be bothered with it. I just want to kind of freeball this whole thing because it's it's affecting is what that movie was. Because it of course touches upon themes that are still well alive and well in like the future of reality from that movie, but in the future. But some of the stuff is depressingly the same. I mean, I know it's a movie and it's fiction, but it's reflecting life. So, and yeah, and yes, it's a period piece, but still. So, before I wanted to even start talking, I wanted to do some looking into it because I wanted to be sure that what I was understanding about it was also what other people were understanding. Like I wanted, like it's okay if I see other things besides that, but this is a big deal. I wanted to get it right. So my first impression was this is dreadful. Why would you want to know about this story? Like, please show me the light in this somewhere. And there actually is some, on more than one occasion, light breaks through, but it's pretty dark. Um, and it's very oppressive because, as a woman, of course, I'm going to look at the woman's plight, or, if she's having a good time in her life, I'm going to look at that too. But I'm very conscious of how restricted a woman's life was at that time. Like you were expected to behave certain ways, you were expected to look certain ways, and it's the same is true today. But today you can just deviate from. whatever the norm is if you want, because that's freedom. But women did not have that in the 20s. Uh, and so it was hard to watch Rose, which was the character played by Kirsten Dunst, especially when she started drinking. And this is completely beyond the boundaries of the film itself, but and I had to give some serious thought if I wanted to even mention this too. But it's out there in the public, so and I'm not saying it in a way to put her down in any way. I mean, if anything, more power to her. But I was like, should she be playing a drunk? Because you can use your search bar very well, I'm sure, if you want to know what I'm referencing about her and drinking. And I really don't want to say any more about it, but it was, I mean, I felt like I was having a flashback on her behalf, watching her as she became more desperate. And honestly, the life she had, I would need a drink too. I mean, jeez. So, and then she's a widow of a husband who suicided, as if the men were equating the man's suicide to her homiciding him or something. It was weird. Like, how is it at all her fault? Like, if she drove him to it, that's a different thing. But that I didn't see that. They didn't really show that part of the character's story, but it didn't seem to be the case. But then the person saying it really is the person at the heart of the movie, which would be sorry, inappropriate laugh. Benedict Cumberbatch plays Phil, and he's the star. But I was watching it, and even just now, I almost did it, and I was just letting myself go with it because I'm just here in the house talking to myself and my cats or the occasional guest. And but I kept calling him Benderson, Benderson Cumberbatch. This character that he played, for that he's Benderson. So anyway, Benderson's character Phil is just a wretched creature. Okay, and here's the thing I want to be sure about. Okay, so I don't want to step on anybody's toes about this stuff. It's such a sensitive subject, and even I, as a just boring old cisgender woman, I feel affected by all of the stuff that all of the people that have, you know, uh, sexuality or whatever goes along with it, proclivities, whatever. It's not, if it's not like something I'm a part of, I don't feel like I have anything to say about it, really. I barely feel like I have anything to say about the people that I'm actually partnering up with. It's like, it's a negotiation, but speaking personally, it's a negotiation. But I mean, it's always like a fraught thing to approach it on any level. And I just feel like if it's not your thing, man, you probably shouldn't be talking about it. Like, we can have opinions and ideas and all of that, but we got to remember to keep it in our own corrals. Like, just because that's the way you feel doesn't mean everybody's got to feel that way. Unfortunately, that's kind of the prevailing way our society has run, the world has run for like ever since we've had societies, since we've cultured up. And wow, I don't even want to go into all of that, like, stuff that has to do with being a good citizen and conforming and that type of thing, because that's kind of really old, ancient. We got to break free of that crap. It's destructive. It's not evolutionary. It's like It's like the American pay wage. It takes 30 years for it to move up any increment. Okay, sorry. Now I'm just okay. Don't get lost. So Benderson Cumberbatch's character Phil is just horrible. You know, he's mean, mean to his brother. Who, I mean, he's so nasty. He would have driven me away, that's for sure. And constantly calling him fatty when the man has a name, which is hold on, George. His name is George, the brother. And yes, he's plump, but you know, sometimes people want to make that into a character flaw, but sometimes someone being fat is not as simple as them being a glutton, which is what people think a lot. I can say that because I have had to deal with it, live with it, be approached by it, the whole gamut. So, but I'm only speaking for myself here. I can do that. I can say that. So yeah, Phil's horribly mean to George, and George is not a cowboy. I should mention the brothers, the Burbank brothers, along with their family, own a ranch and a cattle ranch. And Phil the Horrible is a cowboy, and he runs the ranch, and he's the leader of the cowboys, and he swings his big schloiny around, and that's him. Uh, but also, he is so obsessed with what his brother is doing, with his time. Where is he? Where have you been? What have you been doing? And he's got to just pester him and poke at him and tease him. Like, it was really irritating. George, though, took it all in stride, just kind of let it roll off. And it's interesting the dynamic that created between them because George just kind of refused to be bothered by it. Or I don't even know about that. He just kind of was like, I guess it was, pitying the guy, his brother, because he was such a tightly clenched wing nut. um, so, but he's obsessive, Phil is. And George is like what he's got. And why has he got only that? Why has he no woman? Like, that was the second thing I thought about him. The first about Phil. The first thing I thought, and I knew he had. I did wonder where was the wife. Like, why didn't he have a woman? He was pretty old for that time period. Like, you're like practically a what's the opposite of a spinster? Whatever that is, a confirmed bachelor. Well, I mean, confirmed bachelor. That's a euphemism, isn't it? So, I mean, those were my first thoughts about him, and also they were reinforced by how obviously he was tightly clenched and holding something in that was like explosive that made him be so aggressive and con- contentious, cantankerous. The whole the whole balloon knot, okay? So and they have a family. They're both college educated. They're in, oh heck, where are they? I think they're in Colorado, and they've had education, I would assume, on the East Coast because that would have been like the the top thing to do. And they're both fluent in like Greek and Latin, I guess. And well, they really knew how to educate people back then. it's it was a different time, but they really got what you would call a classical education. I think I may have caught the tail end of that, although by the time I was in school, I left before they would have started. I left Catholic school anyway, before they would have started teaching me Latin, but I think they still do that. And I don't think anybody would like bust out the ruler and rap your knuckles for wanting to learn Greek too while you're at it in the Catholic school. But anyway, they're, like one guy's got his foot in the past, and Phil, and he's got all these problems, and George is fine to drive around in a car and wear like city slicker clothes, I guess, suits and that, and bathing and being civil and nice and pleasant and polite. And there was a review I read to make sure what I had was seeing, because I wanted to make sure that I was actually seeing. Okay, let me just spit it out. Phil is latent. I don't even know if latent is the right word, but whatever is like the homosexual holding it back to the point where it's harming them. They're already like abusive and harmful to people around them, but on the inside, it's 100,000 times worse. I imagine, to not be able to come out and be yourself, and he was doing it to himself. And I say that because also in the story was sort of I wonder if I have this right. I want to say the fulcrum to uh, the cracking open finally of Phil was that George marries the woman that owns the rooming house, Rose, with the suicided husband, and she has a son. And he's playing a teenager. I'm not really sure how old the actor Cody. I just want to make sure I'm saying this right. I think it's Smith McPhee. Yep, Cody Smith McPhee. Um, I have a feeling he's older than they had him playing. Oh, but he went off. I guess he went off to college, so I guess he was playing his age. He looks to be about 20-ish in reality. So the son, though, in the restaurant, the first time you see the son, whose name is Peter. When you first see Peter, he's in like the living area of the boarding house slash restaurant that his mom Rose runs, that all of the cowboys and the Burbank family, or the brothers at least, eat at their restaurant. Well, the town eats there, I guess. But anyway, Peter, the first time you see him, he's sitting at his desk in his room, which is in the living quarters, I assume, in the back or above the restaurant. And he's making flowers out of paper, like making petals and whatever. It was like it was pretty. It was like a nice thing to do. And then he wanted to put them on the tables in the restaurant. And so when they were on there, the cowboys all come in, and George. um, and immediately when Peter comes out, Rose's son, he's the waiter. So he comes out to take the orders, and he's putting the vases on the table with the paper flowers in them. And Phil, well, when the kid comes out, Phil just starts with, "Oh, and here comes Nancy boy," and he gets all the other cowboys talking, and they're like laughing at him. So that doesn't change. Like homosexuals just get totally ragged on in public. Just, hi, kid, just walked out. So Phil, though, nobody even tells him that Peter made the flowers. He already is like screwing with Peter about the flowers, just being a dick, like just saying like bad things about them, and like bad things that like the kid made them or something. And I'm not even gonna try to obviously repeat the dialogue, but he was just effing with him, which by that point that, like, dude, are you one of those? But I guess that's part of the being trapped thing, and not feeling like you can, you know, burst out and be free and be yourself. It must make you bitter inside. And yeah. So the kid though, Peter, he's obviously like, I mean, what do you do? If people are just always calling you names, like even if they're naming what you are, and but they're making it pejorative, like what are you supposed to do? It's like being black. You go somewhere and you haven't even done anything except arrive, and people already, as soon as they lay eyes on you, got ideas about you. And unfortunately, they're usually not the most flattering things. And, you know, that's so unfair because it's a thing that I feel like I hear so much about whoever, a black person, a woman, a trans person. They were walking along, minding their own business, shopping, minding their own business, parking their car, minding their own business, and somebody attacks them. And it's not like there's not other people around to see it. You think anybody jumps in and goes, "Hey, don't do that"? Rarely. So, I mean, that's why I've always said, like, I think gay people and black people understand each other's experience more than like anybody else outside of those, that kind of dynamic. And it could extend to other areas other than just gay, because there are other people that are not gay but are trans who get messed with, or just, whatever it is. Like some person might just be effeminate and not be a homosexual, be a heterosexual or bi or whatever. There's so many options, I guess. I mean, if it's something that you're deciding to do, when it's something that you have no control over, like being black or being gay or being a woman, or you, some things I guess you have some control over, but you come out looking this way, and there's not a whole bunch you can do to like take away from the fact that there's obviously a black person sitting in front of you, regardless of whatever else genetically I might have going on. What people see is a black person, and that may not always be evident with gay people or whatever the other marginalized person is, but oftentimes you're just out and about, minding your own business. Like, here's one of mine, out and about in a store, which when I go shopping, I already know what I want before I go in. I'm not there to just linger and window shop and blah, blah. Like, I just want to go in and get out. Too many people. It gets too hot. Like, I don't like to shop. You would think that's not the case as much as I have to do it, or as much as I do it. But it's not about me. Anyway, yeah. You're just doing your thing and minding your own business, and all of a sudden you're being attacked. Well, hi. Are you going to say hello? Hi, Nandor, my little puffball. So anyway, excuse me. Now you may be all distracted. Oh, so the boy though, Peter, he just kind of takes it in stride, because what are you gonna do? It's kind of like your lot in life. And I'm not gonna go too deep into my other thing, but you kind of sign up for it. So the boy is good though, because he ends up, over the course of the movie, taking a lot of crap from people. And his poor mom can't really do anything about it, because the guy that's torturing her son is also torturing her. And it even becomes, whoa, it even becomes clear that this woman who was not initially a drinker, even when her husband committed suicide and left her to fend for herself with the child, um, oh, I love you too, honey. Hi. Oh, he's just such a good boy. He sticks by her and he helps his mother, and he has to deal with all these comments from people, and then that must wound her, I would imagine, to see people saying bad things. But she had no power either, like I was saying earlier. So it was just a collection of kind of miserable people. The only one that seemed to be just fine and dandy with everything was like the Burbank mother, who's just all, my son is, well, she's a mother. My sons are wonderful. She just loved everything, and she seemed to be happy. Like she's actually one of the few, other than like the Cowboys, that don't really have dialogue or scenes, that were kind of happy. There were some natives that came through, and they even mentioned like they wanted hides, and they wanted to know if they could buy them because they made moccasins and gloves. And at that point, the buffalo were long gone. You know what I mean? Like they probably didn't have a cattle ranch to have their own hides. So they would frequently have hides at the Burbank Ranch, and because Phil was such a wiener, he would not sell them to them. He would keep them for himself to make robes and burn the rest. Ridiculous emphasis on dick. So, uh, but there is a crack of light, like George and Rose getting married. Like, that was good, even though Phil tried to make it the most miserable experience possible. And then George, I think, was just super optimistic and maybe had an attitude because he was buoyant and was able to deal with it, of an attitude of just deal with it, or it's just life, but personally, I hate that. Just blah blah, just do whatever thing. Like the people telling you that's so insensitive. Like maybe there's a reason I haven't just whatever the thing is, but out. But it was good for both of them because he was lonely. She needed a woman in that situation, like even more so than today. Like the lonely woman is a trope, but hard in that time. Like still hard now, but yeah, you couldn't vote, you couldn't work really. Like she kind of had to. The rules are so ridiculous, just like they are now. You can't do this except for when that, Like you got to get married and be in the kitchen, but when there's no husband to do the other work, you can't be in the kitchen if you have the family, or like just to even support yourself. It's like mind your garden. Like, aren't you busy enough with your own life? So yeah, what was the other good thing? Well, you finally saw some of Phil's apparent homosexuality. Just it had to come out. It was like I said, it was breaking him from the inside out. And you see him spending time alone doing something that, I mean, I'm not sure what he was doing, like sort of dancing or fetishing, I guess. I'm not sure. You have to see it. Something with a piece of cloth. It wasn't, he only had his shirt off. It wasn't like that. It was just like him feeling like tactile, in a tactile way, feeling this piece of fabric. And he was all by himself. And he took pains to be alone so that he would not be seen. You could see him sneak into his spot, and he was ostensibly bathing also. Well, that's another scene. So I'm like, oh, don't back to just like messing with the clock off by himself. And the boy wanders up on it because he's home on a break and he has nothing else to do. And he will still approach and try to speak to this guy, even though he's just openly horrible to him always. But I guess it wears him down because the boy walks, oh, I guess after the cloth, I'm sorry this is confusing. After Phil was messing with the cloth, I guess he disrobed and got into the water, like a pond or something that was right there. He decided to lay on the shore of this pond and do whatever he was doing with that fabric. And the boy, just wandering around, just heard sounds, and water splashing, I guess, or maybe he was whistling or singing. I forget what it was that the boy heard. Yeah, I guess he heard Phil splashing around bathing, and he like walked into the open out of the woods, and Phil saw him and freaked out and jumped out of the water and started to chase him. And the boy stood there for a second, just kind of like, "Whoa, he's naked." And I think by that point he pretty much had a crush on him anyway. He was like, "Oh, he is really coming after me." And he ran off. So that was funny, but I think that was like what finally cracked Phil open. Um, because the boy was still kind to him, even though he was so horrible. Like the boy knew, you know, that Phil was also not. He was more like Peter than he was everyone else. Let's just say that. And that's where Peter started to change his attitude, or sorry, Phil started to change his attitude towards Peter and started to become nicer and started to teach him like how a cowboy is supposed to dress and wanted him. Whoa, kitty, come on now. Wanted him to model himself after this cowboy that the boy would have not met because he was already dead at that point. But it was like it was Phil's role model, and he was actually being paternal, which is cool, or fraternal, whatever. Um, and the man just like was able to uncinch, unclench a little tiny bit and be a little happier. And he ultimately did not come to a great end in the movie, but and he and the boy like never got together. It was nothing like that. No, Kitty, you're gonna knock my thing over. Uh, but it didn't. The movie as a whole, I just technically it was good. It was beautiful to look at, and the director, it was a woman, which I always like, and she actually did some other movies. Trying to find her name real quick because I want to wrap it up. Okay, it's just not handy, but it's a woman director, and she's directed other films that I actually really enjoyed, and they're also disturbing as well. Not scary disturbing, but in a way that made me stop and think. Like I really had to sit there and think about how I wanted to talk about this, and that's good. Like that's like bonus. You get to watch the movie, and after you have more to think about and derive meaning from, and that's like even though I thought the subject matter was horribly depressing, it was also just really real, which I like. Even though I like a bunch of space stuff, I like reality too, and emotional stuff. And it's hard not to draw parallels with now, but I think I've said enough. Like I said, I'll be linking the information about the movie that I would normally put on my board there in the information box below. And thank you for indulging me. Have a good night. Changed it up on ya.